Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. I'm your host, Roman. We have a terrific show planned for you today. Please don't forget to stay tuned to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station for Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. Tonight, my guest is a certified mindset and perception coach, the founder of Live Not Loaf LLC, and an Army veteran. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Javon Wooden. Welcome to the Drive, sir.
Hey, appreciate you having me, Roman.
Um,
Great to be here, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station your background.
Sure. So my background is I will always start at the age of 17, man. I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood in Rochester, New York. And I always say that I started this journey of becoming a coach then. So the way that started was I faced 7 years in prison. And I say that stemmed from my lack of confidence and belief. So I learned a lot sitting in a jail cell. That's actually when I started a relationship with God, and God got me out of there. And fast forward to today, it just, all of the life lessons that I've learned, all the trauma I faced. We all have similar stories of people who grew up in impoverished environments, growing up without the father. There's a lot of things I had to learn, and I learned those the hard way. And we all know the saying, the hard head makes a soft behind. But it also made a soft heart for me. And it taught me the lessons of compassion and how that really helps to enhance life when you go about things in a way of empathy, in a way of happiness, in a way of joy. And those are the things I teach today in my Own Your Kingdom coaching programs.
Give us a brief synopsis of your book. You're currently writing a book or have a book that's about to come out. Can you give us a brief synopsis of that?
Yeah, so really it's called Own Your Kingdom, How to Control Your Mindset So You Can Control Your Destiny. And this book is a culmination of everything I've gone through along the journey I just spoke on. So I talk about how to forgive yourself, how to become vulnerable in a healthy way, have those healthy conversations so you can create 360 security in your life, 360 support in your life. So because the support system is very important as you work to become the best version of yourself. So there's a lot of things in this book that really helps you create an action plan for success to become the best you and design a life you don't need a vacation from. And it's not just a book you read, it's a book you implement. So in between each chapter, there's a note section, and there's also a free workbook that you just download and take advantage of the exercises that I call out throughout the chapters. So you're implementing, not just reading and throwing it to the side.
In writing your book, was it a way to tell your story as well as it being therapeutic for you? Because you were in prison, and I know some people, when they're in prison, they jot down notes. I don't want people to learn from my mistakes. So tell us about writing and telling your story and how it was therapeutic for you.
So I went to jail. I didn't go to prison, thank God. But I was facing 7 years. But it was very therapeutic writing this book because it really is it's not really my story, but the things I've learned. It showed me how help is really necessary to heal, and that's what I was talking about in this book. If I never got the help, if I never went to therapy, if I never told someone that I wasn't okay, I might not be sitting here in front of you today. And that's what this book is really communicating. It's communicating the importance of that, the importance of being able to say, hey, I need some help. The importance of being able to say, all right, I'm not good. Let me go ahead and talk to someone. Let my friends know. Let my family know. So that's the therapeutic aspect of this book, was just talking about that, getting those things out into the atmosphere, because quite frankly, Black men don't talk about it enough.
Why do you think Black men don't talk about it enough?
Well, the reasons why, I believe, are because how we, certain things are ingrained in our minds. So throughout our lives, throughout even, generationally, we've been told to suck it up. Don't share your emotions. Any emotions other than, being angry or being dominant, are weak. Don't cry. All these things. And that has been instilled in us throughout our existence. And that has really caused an issue when it comes to sharing emotions, to saying that I'm not okay, saying that I need help, crying, expressing love. All those things were impacted by that. So now that this conversation is starting to be had, right, this is not as taboo as it once was. And this has been in the past maybe 3 to 5 years that we're starting to hear more about mental health and emotional intelligence and all those great things. So now that it's became coming better, or easier to talk about, you're starting to see platforms such as yours where it's becoming a thing.
In your bio, you mentioned that you are a certified mindset and perception coach. Please
Mhm.
define what is mindset and perception is for us and how it can be effective to people with unhealthy mindset balance.
Sure. Great question, Roman. So mindset is really ties into everything you do. The way you look at yourself, your emotional intelligence, or the way that you communicate things. And when I say emotional intelligence, I'm talking about the ability to be empathetic, put yourself in someone else's shoes, understand their perspective, listen to what they're saying, to respond. I mean, not to respond, but to understand. All those things fall under the category of mindset. And many people struggle with a scarcity mindset or a fixed mindset, where they're looking at what they don't have, the negative things that's taking place. And it's not a atypical thing. That's something that really is human nature. So what I focus on is changing that. It's a paradigm shift, helping people see positives come in an abundant space. So they're saying, okay, not what don't I have? Maybe how can I get it? Or be grateful for what you have in the moment so you can move forward. And it's really about having that awareness, that mindfulness. We hear that word often, right? Being in the present moment, but not being so tied to your past that you can't move forward, and not being so tied to what happens in the future that you can't think about anything else that's in the present moment. And then perception is really that thing again, like when you come from a perception of lack or less than and all those other things, it's really hard to believe that things can change. And you start making your problems and your pain permanent. So we change that and say, all right, this is temporary. Let's figure out an action plan to make things better. Let's figure out an action plan where we can change our circumstances to get to where we want to be. And in order to do this, we have to be able to imagine success. We have to look at ourselves and say, we are capable of doing X thing, whatever that goal is, and planning goals. We're capable of planning goals, right? So many of us are afraid to see long term, because we don't believe. So we have to really help to build that up in people.
You also were diagnosed with PTSD. Can you
Mhm.
elaborate for us what is PTSD is? And because we're talking about the mindset, and
Mhm.
a lot of times people say, okay, you're in the army, and once you're diagnosed with PTSD, it's kind of like almost like a death sentence for Black
Mhm.
men, and people don't want to
Mhm.
deal with you. So, can you elaborate for us what is PTSD?
Yeah, so PTSD stands for post traumatic stress disorder. And it's very important for people to understand that it's not only for military personnel, it's something that anyone can have. Anyone who's been experiencing trauma, they can have symptoms of PTSD. And how it manifests can be in different ways. It could be triggered by a certain environment, certain smells, certain, just certain situations. So one of the ways to address it is really understanding those triggers. And then once you can understand triggers or what causes it or what exacerbates the issue, now we can create coping strategies. And the way that I've created coping strategies was going into therapy and getting my own coach, right? So I can work towards these things and talk about it. Talk therapy helps a lot. And sometimes that's just talking to your friend about it. So it really shows up in different ways. For instance, for me, the event that transpired was there was a suicide bomber that detonated while we were waiting at a Veterans Day run on Bagram Air Force Base that was about 300 meters away from me. And what that did for me was it impacted me like loud noises. It caused some anguish with thinking that I could change things, all those types of things. So you just have to pay attention and be aware to yourself. A lot of us, we don't realize that trauma has taken place, and that's one of the big issues in the world, when you don't realize that you've been through trauma, because so many people just push it through the side. They try to forget it, or they think that, oh, I shouldn't be talking about this. So it's very important just to have those conversations. If something happened, could be sexual trauma, could be physical abuse, could be anything, just talk to someone about it. That way you can start getting over it. That way you don't stay in that event, because once you talk about it, you take away some of that power of that event. You take away some of the power of the person that's done you wrong, etc.
More and more Blacks suffer from PTSD. However,
Mm-hmm.
they do not know it. What are
Right.
some of the signs? You mentioned signs earlier,
Mm-hmm.
people should be aware of in case someone or themselves may have PTSD. Because nowadays, a lot of people don't know or it's not officially diagnosed. What are
Right.
the signs to say, hey, this is an alarming type of situation and it's repetitive? You need to check this out, or we need to go together to check it out.
Right. And you mentioned one of the key things, repetition. If you notice that in certain situations, or maybe something specific is taking place, that you have a reaction to it, then you may have PTSD, right? So if there's a loud noise and you hit the ground, or you jump, and you just cower, whatever the case may be, you may have PTSD, and you need to go get that checked and talk to someone
But
about it.
I'm going to stop you there, because when
Hmm.
you say a loud noise, you're talking about if you stay in certain neighborhoods, you hear a loud bang, that's
Hmm.
everybody.
Right. Exactly. But it's not everyone that's getting PTSD. That's the important distinction, right? Everyone doesn't react the same way. Some of us can hear that loud bang and it doesn't bother us at all. But some people can hear the backfire from a car in any neighborhood, or they hear something hit the table and they think it's a gunshot and they hit the ground. Right, that's when you may know that you're really experiencing those symptoms. So it's your reaction to an event, and that reaction is involuntary. You don't even know that you did it, and that's the problem, right? So when you don't know that you're doing these things, that's when you need to get checked.
Given the nature of mental illness in the Black community, why do you think it is being ignored in our community more so than others? It just seems like, as we talk about PTSD and depression and other mental illness, especially when it comes to Black men, it's kind of like I said earlier, almost like a death sentence, and people are willing to kind of like write you off,
Mm-hmm.
period. And it has caused marital problems, that ends in divorce, relationship problems, family problems as well. Why do you think it's being ignored, especially in the Black community among Black males?
So there's a couple of things there. One is the stigma around it, around mental health issues. There's a negative stigma, and a lot of people still feel like, hey, if I go get help, then I'm crazy, right? And that narrative has to change. The way that we speak about these things, we really have to be more mindful about. So instead of looking at someone and saying, "Man, you crazy," and it may be in a joking way, but that has a feeling, that has a stigma that we have in our communities that we need to get rid of. So we have to start having these conversations more often, like we are doing. We have to let people know that they have that support and that we're not going to judge them. And we have to be real. We have to start having these conversations ourselves. If something's not right and you're feeling a type of way, it's on you to really let people know that, and it's on you to reach out. And one of those things is letting people know in the communities that there are resources, because a lot of these things seem intangible, right? You talk about a therapist, first thing somebody might say is, man, that costs money, or I don't have insurance, whatever the case may be. So trying to get that accessibility within the communities is another key, because if it seems out of reach, no one's going to even bat an eye. They're going to say, yeah, that sounds nice, but that won't work for me, or that's not the case for me, whatever the case may
Do
be.
you
So,
think it's a manly thing that I don't need help, even though deep down inside you do need help?
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
I come from a father that served in the Vietnam War. And a lot of times my mom said to me, you know what? Before your dad went to war, he had just like you. He had a mild temperament. What what possesses the mental anguish when people who serve their country and they come back and there's anger, there's
Mhm.
resentment, there is racism because,
Mhm.
I'm just being honest. My father, when it comes to, he will call you out a racist in a minute. And that's him. And how can the Black community make mental illness an issue in their own community? You said, okay, we need to talk about it, but you can talk about it until you're blue in the face. We need to have shows like this. But again, you can talk about it. What is the action plan that we can move forward to help Black men, such as yourself, to kind of say, you know what, this is what we need to do?
Right. And yes, like I said before, it's more about making it more of a regular thing, right? Because like it is a manly thing, right? Well, I'm not going to the doctor, right? You can have your arm broken, you don't want to go to the doctor, right? So it's more so that conversation leads to action. So it's like, all right, cool. Hey, when we hear somebody say, I went to therapy, that really gives people license to say, all right, this person went to therapy. Maybe it's someone we follow, like a rapper or, an actor, whoever it is, right? We've starting to see them say this more often. And that gives people license to say, all right, this might be all right. Right. If
But
I see this person, I see my best friend doing it, then maybe I can go. And then we can have support. In order that when you have these conversations, you allow people to say, all right, you know what? I was having this issue and I didn't want to talk to no one. But now that you're telling me your story, now that you're telling me you did therapy and all these other things, tell me more about it, because I always thought therapy was for the crazy person. I always thought therapy was for the mentally insane, whatever the case may be. It changes that discussion. It changes what that word means. And that's where we have to start, because no one's going to want to do it if we never change the definition. We never change what comes with that word.
there is a however component, and that however component is, okay, I hear you. But if I don't have a support mechanism from my Black queen, if I don't have the support mechanism of my family, I'm going to shut down and just deal with it myself. You say to that.
Well, so you have to, again, I mentioned support. So a lot of times when people say they don't have the support system, I always ask the question, have you ever brought it up to them? Because again, if you
Because they
never have
fear
that,
of judgment. And
right,
if you have judgmental people in your family, judgmental people in your circle, and you don't change your circle, which
again, yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
and like, you're cool with this person, but
hmm,
this is what you know. This is, and some people think this is who I am, even
hmm,
though they know they're better than that deep down inside. But people hang out with these people and they know better. It's kind of like, wrong, and the people you hanging out is wrong,
hmm.
but you do it anyway. You say to that.
Well, again, I mean, you made a good point. Like, if that's the case, if they're judgmental, see, that's a difference. That's a distinction, though. Because if you have someone around you that is not judgmental, that you know you can go to, that's the type of support you want to put around you. When I mentioned that 360 support system, right? So if you know you have people around you that are judgmental, that are going to bring you down, like you said, change your circle, right? Change your environment, change whatever you need to do, but also understand that it's ultimately up to you, right? You mentioned you could talk to this blue in your face, but you have to be accountable for your health, right? If I know that I need that therapy, damn what everyone else says. I know I need to go because it's going to save my life and it's going to give me options and opportunities. At some point, you just have to say, hey, I'm going to go. I don't care what you think. That opinion can't hold that much weight for you, right? You need to save yourself, save your life, and get around people who support that.
When did you hold yourself accountable and say, hey, it's time for me to get some help?
So I went to therapy. I initially started therapy after my last deployment to Afghanistan in 2017, where that PTSD and the depression caused suicidal ideations. And I remember I called my sister and I just let her know, like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I had those same thoughts, right? That I had to be Superman, that I couldn't let anyone know how I was feeling, all that thing. I get that. I get what we're saying here. But again, that cannot, if you wait too long, that weight is going to crush you. You literally have to just take it upon yourself and say, hey, I know I need this. Whatever else somebody says doesn't matter. Forget their opinions. If it's negative and you know you need it, go get it. Because I had to make that call. I had to make that decision. No one was going to push me to therapy. Again, we're black, in the black community. That's still a thing, especially then, right? That people didn't really talk about, but I knew I needed it, or else I might not been there for much longer. Might not been on this earth for much longer. So that's when I started holding myself accountable to say, no one else can save me. I need to save myself.
Depression is another unbalanced mindset that people suffer from. However, there is depression and there is depression. What is the
Mhm.
difference when someone is depressed versus someone who is depressed for a day or two? And
Mhm.
because you mentioned earlier, just a few moments ago, that
Mhm.
you got to be careful. You can be depressed, but there is a thing called being too depressed.
Mhm. So I think um, one, I think the word depression is used loosely. I think a lot of people feel sad, right? And they call it depressed. When we have to understand what's normal for humans, right? We're not always going to be up. We're not always going to be happy. There's always going to be a counterbalance to that, right? Which is feeling down or not feeling like you're motivated or whatever. So we have to be careful with how we use that word. So true depression, again, manifests for different people in different ways, but typically you lack motivation to do things you once enjoyed, right? You might not want to talk to anyone. You might retreat. It may be tough to even get out of bed. You may find that you haven't showered in a couple of days. You just things that would be part of your normal routine, you just cut them out. Or people you would normally love to talk to, you don't want to talk to anyone. um, your motivation to do things, even if it's cool and fun stuff, you don't want to do it. And you want to seclude, you want to become recluse. So there's certain signs that you just need to look at. And you mentioned duration. You could be depressed for a day, right? But if it's a constant thing, like you find that you having these really low lows, and it's just hitting you sporadically, then you should definitely talk to someone about that. We just have to start paying better attention to ourselves in our normal things, our baselines, so that we can understand when we need to talk to someone to get the help. And it's not a bad thing to just go talk to someone anyway. You might feel like you're good, but it's better to be proactive than reactive.
Well, we also got to make sure that when you talk to someone, you talk to the right person because there are
Hmm.
people out there that can push someone over the edge. And there is such things as people would say, you know what? You need to talk to Jesus. You need to go to church.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not
How many
saying
professionals
anything in not saying
would
anything is
answer that?
wrong with that. The
Hmm.
however component is if you don't have that person or that family member that's like they're there and would listen
Hmm.
to you, then some people would say, what's the point if you don't, like you said, don't have that component? So I want you
Mhm.
to tell us about your transformational group and one-on-one coaching session for us.
Sure. So it covers, it encompasses a lot of what we spoke on earlier. The vulnerability, communicating effectively, learning yourself, right? Truly going and doing that introspection and doing that work of learning who you are, what you value, and what you want your life to look like. Giving you license to dream again, giving you license to say this doesn't have to be it for me. I can go for the big things, etc. And again, it's the mindset. It's creating that solid foundation, because no matter how beautiful the house looks, if the foundation is shaky, it's going to crumble. So I focus on the triad. So it's the physical, the spiritual, and the mental. That's where you get the focus when you have those three aligned. So we do a lot of work up front in identifying, what your goals are, what you're holding on to that would hold you back, that you're keeping in your life, your negative anchors, in identifying an action plan to move forward from all of that. The key thing is keeping you accountable, right? Holding you accountable, understanding that you have to be accountable for yourself as well, as we create these action steps. And we do exercise and all of that, but really the work is done outside. So we want to form habits. We want to build your success muscle, so to speak. So all the negative habits, once we identify them, we replace them with positive habits that really align with your vision of what success looks like.
All right. So please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station where they can get in contact with you and where they can purchase your book.
Sure. So at Live Not Loathe on all social media platforms, that's LIVENOTLOATHE. And you can also go to livenotloathe.com, where you can find my book, my courses, and just connect with me on my newsletter.
All right. Don't be a stranger to the Drive at 5, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, brother. And great, powerful discussion. I love the questions.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, sir.
You too.
When
Bye
we
bye.
come back on the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station, the second half of the Drive at 5, what an instructions minister and success coach have in common? You'll find out in a short break. After this short break.